Kale moved through the bright, clean hallway of the research outpost. His long, thin fingers tapped on the data slate he carried. The outpost was on a quiet world called Illyria 4. It was a place for learning, full of scientists from many different stars. The air always smelled a little like metal and clean water. Kale was an alien, a vril. His skin was a soft gray. He had large, dark eyes that could see very well in the dark. On his head and neck he had delicate folds of skin like a frill. These frills moved with his feelings. Right now they were pressed flat against his neck. He was nervous. New people were coming to the outpost today, humans, from the planet called Earth. He stopped and looked at his data slate again. The words on the screen made his frills twitch. Species, Homo sapiens. Classification, apex predator. He read the words below. Physical traits, high endurance. Dense muscle structure. Forward-facing eyes, a trait of hunting species. History, extensive intra-species conflict. The report said humans were not immediately dangerous. They were passively threatening. This meant they were not looking for a fight, but you should not make them angry. The report said to be calm and polite around them. Do not show fear, Kale took a slow breath. He was a xenosociologist. His job was to understand how different species think and live. He was supposed to help the humans feel welcome, but the file made him feel uneasy. He heard voices ahead. The door to the landing bay was open. He walked in. 2 humans stood there next to a small lander ship, a man and a woman. They were putting their bags on a floating cart. The man was named Jin. He was not very tall, but he looked strong. He had black hair and a calm face. He saw Kale and smiled. His teeth were very white and straight. The woman was Su Min. She had long dark hair tied back. She was looking at a plant on a table, her head tilted. She was the team's botanist, a plant expert. Hello, Jin said. His voice was warm and friendly. You must be Kyle. They told us you would be our guide. Kyle bowed his head slightly, a sign of respect for his people. Yes, I am Kale. Welcome to the Illyria 4 outpost. He tried to keep his voice steady. He tried not to stare at their eyes. The report said their direct gaze was a sign of a predator focusing on its prey. Su Min turned and smiled too. Your arboretum is beautiful. I saw the blue-leafed ferns from the ship. I cannot wait to study them. That is good, Kale said. His frills wanted to tighten. He forced them to stay still. They were so confident. They stood so straight. They moved with a certainty that was strange to him. His own people were quieter, more careful. Then a sound came from inside the lander. A heavy shuffling sound. Then a deep rumbling breath. Kale froze. What is that? He asked. His frills now stood up a little. He could not stop them. Jin's smile got bigger. Ah, that is the other member of our team. From the darkness of the lander, a large shape appeared. It was an animal. A very, very large animal. It walked out on 4 legs. It was covered in thick, shaggy white fur. Its head was huge, with a broad muzzle and a dark nose. Its eyes were hidden by fur, but Kyle could see them, dark and intelligent. The creature was as tall as Jin's waist. It must have weighed more than both humans put together. The animal shook itself, and the sound was like a rug being beaten. It then walked over to Jin and leaned its heavy body against the man's leg. Kale took a step back. His heart was beating fast. This was a predator. There was no doubt. Its size, its powerful build, the sheer strength in its body. He had read the files on Earth's wildlife. This must be one of their top hunters. This is your companion? Kale asked, his voice tight. Yes, Su Min said cheerfully. This is Boss. The animal Boss turned its massive head and looked right at Kale. It panted, its tongue lolling out. Kyle saw its teeth. They were long and sharp. Boss? Kyle repeated the strange word. It is a title, Jin explained, rubbing the animal's head. It means he is in charge. Kyle felt a cold fear. The humans had brought an apex predator with them, and they treated it like a pet. This was worse than he thought. To keep such a deadly creature so close, it must mean they had total control over it. They must be even more dominant and powerful than the files suggested. Boss took a step toward Kyle. He sniffed the air. Kyle stood perfectly still. On his world, this was what a stalking grazer did before it attacked. Do not be afraid, Jin said softly. He is just curious. He is friendly. Friendly? Kale watched as the beast came closer. Its head was level with Kale's chest. It could easily knock him down. It could bite him with those powerful jaws. Boss stopped in front of him. He sniffed Kale's hand. The breath was warm and moist. Then Boss did something completely unexpected. He pushed his big head up under Kale's hand. Kale flinched. "He wants you to pet him," Suman said with a laugh. Kale looked at Jin. Jin nodded, still smiling. Slowly, very slowly, Kale raised his hand. He placed it on top of the animal's head. The fur was surprisingly soft and thick. He moved his fingers, a small nervous pat. Boss made a low sound. A rumble started deep in its chest. For a second, Kale thought it was a growl, a warning. He pulled his hand back, but Jin laughed. "No, it is okay. That is a good sound. It means he is happy. We call it purring. Purring? A happy sound from a killer?" Kale was confused. He put his hand back. The rumbling got louder. Boss leaned into the touch, his whole back end wagging from side to side. Kale saw Jin then take a small brown piece of food from his pocket. He held it in his flat palm. "Here, boss," Jin said. The huge animal turned. Gently, with a care that seemed impossible for its size, it took the food from Jin's hand. It did not snap or bite. Its lips brushed Jin's skin. It chewed twice and swallowed, then looked at Jin for more. Kale watched this simple act, and his fear grew. This was not just control. This was a display of supreme power. The human was so sure of his dominance that he could feed the beast from his bare hand. He was showing that the predator was completely at his command. It was the most terrifying thing Kale had ever seen. He looked at Boss, then at Jin, and then at Suman. They were all so calm. They did not see the danger. Or, more likely, they were the danger. He had to be very, very careful with these humans. Their friendly smiles were a mask. Inside, they were the masters of the most fearsome creature he had ever met. And if they could command such a beast, what were they truly capable of? The outpost hummed with its usual quiet activity. For several days, Kale had guided Jin and Suman around. He showed them the labs, the living areas, and the large garden room called the Arboretum. Suman spent most of her time there studying the strange blue plants. Kale tried to be a good host. He answered their questions. He shared meals with them, but he could never fully relax. His eyes were always watching Boss. The huge animal followed Jin everywhere. It walked quietly by his side. It slept on the floor next to his bed. Sometimes it would play. Jin would throw a small ball and Boss would run after it, his big feet pounding on the floor. The sound made Kale's frills tighten. It was a reminder of the power in that body. Kyle saw how the other aliens reacted. A small bird-like scientist named Pick would let out a frightened chirp and fly to a higher ledge when Boss walked by. The large, slow-moving Boran would press themselves against the wall to let the human and his animal pass. Everyone was afraid. One afternoon, Kale was working with Jin in a lab. They were looking at maps of the planet. Boss was lying on the cool floor sleeping. His chest rose and fell in a steady rhythm. He was snoring, a soft rumbling sound. "He seems very calm," Kyle said carefully. Jin looked down at the sleeping animal and smiled. "He is, most of the time. But he is also the best warning system you can have. If something is wrong, he will know first." Kyle did not understand. "How?" "His hearing is much better than ours. His sense of smell is incredible. He can feel things we cannot." Jin said it like it was a simple fact, like saying water is wet. Kale looked at the sleeping creature. He thought about those sharp senses. It sounded like a perfect hunting tool, a predator's tool. Just then Boss stirred. His head lifted from the floor. His ears twitched. He let out a low whine. Jin stopped talking. He looked at Boss, his smile gone. "What is it, boy?" Boss stood up. His body was tense. He was not looking at Jin or Kale. He was looking at the door. A deep growl started in his throat. It was a different sound from the happy purr. This sound was a warning. It was a threat. Kale felt a spike of fear. Was the animal about to attack? Had something set it off? Then the lights flickered. A low alarm began to sound. A calm, computerized voice spoke from the walls. "Warning. Atmospheric disturbance detected. Please secure all stations." Jin was immediately on his feet. A storm? They said the weather was clear. The alarm grew louder. The lights flickered again, then died. For a second, the room was pitch black. Kale could hear Boss growling in the darkness. It was a terrifying sound. Then the emergency lights came on. They cast a dim red glow over everything. The computer voice was no longer calm. It was urgent. Critical failure. Power grid instability. Breach in Module C, Arboretum. Emergency doors activated. Kale's blood ran cold. The Arboretum. Suman was in the Arboretum, and the emergency doors were sealed. No one could get in, or out. Jin's face was pale in the red light. Suman, he said. He ran to the door, but it was locked. The emergency protocol had sealed all sections. We cannot get there from here, Kale said, his voice shaking. The main hallway is blocked. The doors will not open without power. We have to get her out. Jin's voice was tight with fear. If there is a breach, the air is leaking out. She does not have much time. They ran to a control panel. Jin tried to bring up a schematic of the outpost. The screen was dead. Is there another way? A service duct? Anything? Kale thought fast. His mind was racing. There are service ducts for maintenance. They run behind the walls, but they are small and dangerous. There is no light. There could be broken wires. Live wires. Show me, Jin said. Kale led him to a small hidden panel in the wall. He opened it. Inside was a dark, narrow tunnel. It was just big enough for a person to crawl through. But it was a maze, and in the dark with no power it would be easy to get lost, or electrocuted. It is impossible, Kale said, his frills flat with despair. We would never find the way. And the door to the Arboretum module from the duct, it will be sealed too. We would need to connect a power source from this side to override the manual release on her side. Jin stared into the dark duct. He looked back at Boss, who was still growling. His body pointed toward the hidden tunnel. He looked like he knew where the trouble was. An idea seemed to form in Jin's mind. A desperate, crazy idea. Boss can do it, Jin said. Kale stared at him. What? He can find her. He knows her scent. He can navigate the dark. He is strong enough to push through obstacles. You cannot send an animal, Kale protested. It is a predator. It will be scared. It will panic. It will not understand. Jin knelt in front of Boss. He took the big animal's head in his hands. He did not look scared. He looked serious. He looked into Boss's dark eyes. Boss, Jin said, his voice low and firm. Listen, Sumin, find Sumin. Boss stopped growling. He whined and licked Jin's face. He understood the name. Jin found a small spool of strong, thin wire. It was a microfilament cable used for repairs. It was strong enough to pull a heavier cable through. He attached the spool to the harness that Boss always wore. You take this to her, boy. You find her. Go. Jin pointed into the dark service duct. For a moment, Boss looked at the dark tunnel. He sniffed the air. Then he looked back at Jin. There was no panic in his eyes. There was a fierce intelligence. A purpose. He gave one sharp bark. Then he pushed past Jin and plunged into the darkness. The sound of his big body shuffling through the narrow duct faded quickly. Kale stood there, stunned. He had expected the beast to refuse, to run away, to bite. He had not expected this. This obedience. This focused determination. It was not the behavior of a dominated animal. A dominated animal would cower. It would need to be forced. This was the behavior of a partner. A member of a team. Jin stood up, his face grim. He started attaching the end of the thin wire to a much thicker power conduit cable. When he finds her, she will hook this to the door release. Then we can pull the conduit through and power it up from here. Kale could not speak. He just watched the dark hole where the massive predator had disappeared. He was not just afraid for Sumin now. He was afraid for the animal too. And that was a feeling he never thought he would have. He thought about the beast alone in the dark, dangerous tunnels. He thought about it being shocked by live wires. He thought about it getting stuck, scared, and alone. And for the first time, the thought of that happening to Boss made him feel sad. The world was dark and tight and full of strange smells. Boss pushed his way forward. His heavy fur brushed against the walls of the metal tunnel. His claws clicked on the floor. He was not afraid of the dark. His eyes were made for low light. He could see shapes and movements where a human would see nothing. He was not afraid of the small space. He was strong. He could push through. He was focused on one thing. The sound of Jin's voice. Find Sumin. He knew her smell. It was the smell of green growing things and a kind hand. It was a good smell. A safe smell. He needed to find it. The air in the duct smelled of oil, dust, and fear. He could smell the sharp, sour scent of the other aliens who were scared. He could smell the strange, clean scent of Kale, but he pushed those smells away. He was looking for one. He came to a place where the tunnel split into two. He stopped. He sniffed the air down the left path. Nothing. He sniffed the right path. There. Faint but clear. The green smell of Su-Min. He turned right. The tunnel was blocked. A heavy grate had fallen from the ceiling. It was stuck. Boss nudged it with his nose. It did not move. He backed up a few steps. Then he put his big head and powerful shoulders against the metal and pushed. His muscles strained. The metal groaned and screeched as it bent. He pushed again and it gave way, sliding to the side just enough for him to squeeze through. Further on, the air smelled wrong. It smelled like lightning. A tangle of wires hung from the ceiling, sparking and buzzing. The sparks made little bright flashes in the dark. Boss remembered a time he touched a wire like that. It hurt, a sharp sudden pain. He did not like it. He looked at the sparking wires. He had to go under them. He crouched low, his belly almost touching the floor. He started to crawl forward, slow and careful. A long spark jumped from the wires. It touched his back. Pain shot through him. It was hot and sharp. He yelped, a loud surprise sound that echoed in the tunnel. He jumped back. The smell of burnt fur filled his nose. He stood there, panting. The spot on his back hurt. He wanted to turn around. He wanted to go back to Jin, where it was safe. But Jin's words were in his head. "Fine, Su-Min," he whined softly. He looked at the sparking wires again. He had to go through. He took a deep breath. He crouched even lower this time. He moved forward faster now. He pushed his body under the dangerous wires. Another spark snapped near his ear, but he did not stop. He kept moving until he was safely on the other side. He shook his whole body, trying to shake off the memory of the pain. Then he lifted his head and sniffed the air. Su-Min's smell was stronger now. He was close. He started to run, his big body thumping through the narrow space. He did not care about the noise anymore. He was almost there. Inside the arboretum, the world was ending. The red emergency lights made the green plants look black and dead. The air was thin and cold. A terrible whistling sound came from a crack in the outer wall. The air was being sucked out into space. Su-Min and 3 other alien scientists were huddled together. They had put on the emergency oxygen masks that hung on the walls. The masks gave them air, but they did not stop the cold. They did not stop the fear. One of the scientists, a small furry Plorxian named Teak, was trapped. A heavy branch from a fallen tree had pinned his leg to the floor. He was crying, small scared sounds. Su-Min was trying to lift the branch, but it was too heavy. "I cannot move it," she said, her voice muffled by her mask. Then they all heard it. A sound from the wall. A scraping, shuffling sound. Then a heavy thump. Something was in the service duct. Teak let out a terrified squeak. "What is that? Is it the hull breaking?" Su-Min looked toward the sound. Her heart was pounding. The sound was coming from the duct's access panel. With a loud metallic groan, the panel was pushed open from the inside. It fell to the floor with a clang, and from the dark hole a huge white furry head emerged. It was Boss. His fur was dirty and dusty. A small patch on his back was blackened. He was panting, his tongue out. His dark eyes scanned the room. The alien scientists screamed. They scrambled backward, pressing themselves against the far wall. This was the human's beast, the apex predator. It had come for them. It must have smelled their fear. "No," one of them cried. "It is going to eat us." Su-Min's fear turned to sudden bright hope. "Boss!" she shouted. Boss's ears perked up at the sound of her voice. He climbed out of the duct. His whole body was massive in the small space. He shook himself and then he ran straight to Su-Min. He did not look at the cowering aliens. He pushed his big head into her hands, whining and wagging his tail. He was telling her he found her. He did his job. Su-Min hugged him, her eyes wet with tears. "Good boy, boss." "Good boy." She saw the spool of wire on his harness. She understood immediately. "Jin sent you. You brilliant boy." She took the wire from his harness, but then she looked at Teak, who was still trapped and sobbing. The branch was too heavy for her. "But maybe not for Boss, she said, pointing. Help him." Boss turned. He looked at the crying Plorxian. He looked at the heavy branch on his leg. He walked over to Teak. His steps were loud on the floor. Teak shut his eyes tight, waiting for the bite of sharp teeth. But the bite did not come. Instead, Teak felt a warm, wet nose sniff his face. Then he felt a powerful head push against the branch on his leg. Boss got his strong jaws around the thick part of the branch. He braced his feet. With a grunt of effort, he lifted. The branch moved. Just an inch, but it was enough. Suman quickly pulled Teek's leg out from under it. "You're free!" Boss dropped the branch. He looked at Teek, who was staring at him with wide, shocked eyes. The little alien was not food. He was part of the pack that needed help. Boss leaned down and licked Teek's furry face once, a rough, wet, comforting gesture. Then he turned back to Suman and barked as if to say, "What next?" Suman was already tying the thin wire to the heavy handle of the manual door release. "Okay, boss, we have to tell Jin to pull." She gave the wire a sharp tug, the signal they had agreed on long ago for a game they played. "Pull now." Back in the other section, Jin felt the tug on the wire. "She has it. She's ready." He yelled to Kale. Together they started to pull. The thin wire began to drag the thick, heavy power cable through the dark duct, back toward the Arboretum, back toward Suman and Boss, and toward the terrified aliens who had just seen their monster become a hero. The heavy power cable slid through the service duct. Jin and Kyle pulled with all their strength. On the other end, in the Arboretum, Sumin guided the cable to the manual release for the emergency door. She connected the clamps. "It's ready," she yelled, though no one could hear her. Jin saw the light on his control box turn from red to green. "Now," he shouted to Kale. He sent power through the cable. There was a loud clunk from the other side of the sealed door. Then, with a hiss of equalizing pressure, the heavy door began to slide open. Jin was through the door the moment it was wide enough. Kale followed right behind him. The scene in the Arboretum was one of quiet shock. The red light still glowed. The air was cold, but the whistling from the breach had stopped. The emergency seals had finally activated. The three alien scientists were huddled together, their eyes wide. Suman was kneeling, checking the leg of the small Plorxian Teek, and Boss was sitting right beside her, his big body a warm, solid presence. His tail thumped on the floor when he saw Jin. Jin ran to Suman and pulled her into a tight hug. "You're okay," he breathed, his voice full of relief. "We're okay," she said, hugging him back. "Thanks to Boss." Jin knelt and wrapped his arms around the big dog's neck. Boss whined and licked his face, his whole body wiggling with happiness. The job was done. His person was here. Kale stood a few feet away, watching. He saw the genuine joy on Jin's face. He saw the way Boss leaned into the hug, not out of fear, but out of love. He looked at the other scientists. They were not looking at Boss with terror anymore. They were looking at him with a kind of stunned wonder. Teek, the little Plorxian, pointed a shaky finger at Boss. He lifted the tree," he whispered. "He freed me. And then he licked me," Suman smiled. "He was just telling you it was all right." Kale's mind was trying to understand. The image of the powerful jaws gently lifting the branch instead of biting replayed in his head. The act was so careful, so purposeful. It was not an accident. It was a choice. The emergency was over. The outpost's main power was slowly coming back online. The normal lights replaced the eerie red glow. People started moving again, checking for damage, helping the shaken scientists from the Arboretum. Later, everyone was in the medical bay. Suman was fine. Teek's leg was bruised but not broken. Boss was lying on a clean mat while the human medic, a woman named Jihai, looked at the burn on his back. "He has a minor burn," she said, applying a cool gel. "It will heal quickly." Boss flinched a little but stayed still, trusting the medic. Kale stood near the door, unsure of what to do. Jin saw him and walked over. "Thank you for your help, Kale," Jin said. Kale shook his head. He looked at Boss. "I did nothing. He did everything." He paused, struggling to find the right words. "Jin, I must ask you something. The files on my data slate. They say humans are the apex predators of Earth." Jin nodded. "That is true, but Boss..." Kyle gestured to the large animal who was now happily eating a treat from Jihai's hand. "He is also a predator, yes? A powerful one. You feed him from your hand. You command him. I thought this meant you had dominated him, that you controlled him with your strength." Jin looked surprised. Then he laughed, a soft, understanding laugh. He walked over to Boss and sat on the floor next to him. Boss immediately put his big head in Jin's lap. "Control? No, that is not it at all," Jin said, scratching behind Boss's ears. "Look at him, Kale. Do you think I could make him do anything he did not want to do?" Kyle looked. The animal was huge. If it wanted to, it could easily knock Jin over. It could bite him. But it didn't. It nuzzled Jin's hand, asking for more scratches. Then how? Kale asked, his voice full of confusion. How did your species tame such creatures? Jin's smile was gentle. We did not tame them, Kale. We did not dominate them. We met them a long, long time ago. We were different species, but we saw something in each other. We chose each other. He looked down at Boss. His ancestors and mine, we started to live together. We hunted together. We protected each other from other dangers. We shared our food. We shared our homes. We kept each other warm. We became a pack. A pack. A family, Jin explained. A team. His kind has protected my kind for thousands of years. They guarded our homes. They helped us hunt. They protected our children. We did not command them. We worked with them. We became friends. Kale listened, his frills slowly relaxing. The idea was so strange, so foreign to him. In the galaxy he knew, species either ignored each other, competed with each other, or one dominated the other. This was different. An apex predator, Jin continued, is not just about being the strongest or having the sharpest teeth. It is about being at the top of a chain of connection. You are connected to everything below you. Our true strength was never in being the best killers. He looked straight at Kyle, his eyes honest and clear. It was in making the best friends. It was in building trust. It was in loyalty. That is what you saw today. You did not see a human controlling a beast. You saw a friend going to save another friend. And you saw a loyal partner doing his job to protect the pack. Boss let out a deep, contented sigh in his sleep, his legs twitching as he dreamed. He was not a monster. He was not a weapon. He was a friend who had walked through a dark and dangerous place because his family needed him. Kyle looked at the sleeping dog. He looked at Jin, who sat protectively beside him. He thought about the branch lifted from Teek's leg. He thought about the gentle lick. The fear in his heart was gone. In its place was a new feeling, a feeling of awe. He finally understood. The humans were not scary because they controlled a predator. They were formidable because they had earned its love. Weeks passed. The outpost on Illyria 4 was repaired. Life returned to its normal rhythm. But something had changed. Kale sat in his quiet room, his data slate on the desk in front of him. He was finishing his official report for the Galactic Concordance. The report would be sent to thousands of worlds. He thought about the old file he had read, the one that called humans passively threatening apex predators. He deleted those words. His long fingers moved over the screen, writing new ones. Subject: Re-evaluation of humanity and Canis lupus familiaris. He wrote about the storm. He wrote about the service ducts. He attached the video from the Arboretum camera. The video showed the huge white animal emerging from the dark. It showed the scientists cowering in fear. And then it showed the beast, gently lifting the branch to free the small trapped Plorxian. It showed the lick of comfort. He wrote his conclusion. The human species' defining trait is not aggression, it is loyalty. Their apex predator status is shared with a companion species whose primary evolutionary advantages are devotion, protection, and cooperative problem-solving. Their strength is not individual but social. It is the strength of the pack. He ended the report. He sent it out into the stars. He knew it would cause confusion, it would cause arguments, but it was the truth. Later that day, Kale walked into the outpost's common area. It was a large circular room with windows looking out at the purple sky of Illyria 4. Different species usually sat in their own small groups, but not today. Today, the center of the room was occupied by a large, white, furry rug. The rug was snoring loudly. It was Boss fast asleep on the cool floor, and around him a strange and peaceful scene was taking place. Curled up tightly against Boss's warm back was Teek, the little Plorxian. His furry body rose and fell with the dog's deep breaths. He was sleeping soundly. A young Boran, one of the large, slow-moving aliens, was sitting nearby. Very carefully, with a thick finger, he was stroking Boss's side. He looked fascinated by the softness of the fur. Pick, the bird-like scientist, was not on a high ledge. She was perched bravely on Boss's hip, her head tilted as she listened to the rumbling snores. No one was afraid. They were curious. They were comforted. Jin and Sumin were sitting at a table nearby, drinking tea. They were smiling as they watched. Kyle walked over and joined them. "It seems he has made some new friends," Sumin said softly. Kyle nodded, watching the sleeping dog and his unlikely group of admirers. "The report is sent," he said. "The galaxy will know what really happened here." Jin took a sip of his tea. "And what do you think they will say?" "Some will not believe it," Kyle said honestly. "They will see the video and think it is a trick. They will say the files are wrong. It is hard to change the way you see the universe." He looked at Jin, his dark eyes serious. "But some will believe. Some will understand." He turned his gaze back to the center of the room. Boss let out a particularly loud snort in his sleep, and one of his back legs twitched. Teak snuggled closer without waking up. The Boran continued his gentle petting. It was a picture of perfect peace, a pack, a family, made of many different species. "So," Jin said with a quiet smile, "after all this, do you still think we are the scary ones?" Kyle's frills, which had so often been tight with fear or anxiety, now rested in a calm, smooth layer against his skin. It was a sign of deep thought, of understanding. He looked at the human who had tamed no one but had befriended a giant. He looked at the beast who was not a monster but a protector. He looked at the little community that had formed around them, no longer afraid. "No," Kyle said, his voice firm and clear. "I do not think you are scary at all." He paused, finding the right words for the big feeling in his heart. "I think the galaxy has just learned what the word family can mean. And it is a much stronger thing than we ever imagined." The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but in this one room on a quiet fringe world, a new idea had taken root. An idea brought by the humans and their faithful friends. An idea that the strongest bond in the universe was not fear, or power, or domination. It was friendship, and it was far more powerful than anyone had ever believed.